Hello, everyone. Wow, that's weird to hear myself. Thank you all for coming here. So I know the name of the talk is Stories from the Rite of Passage, and I will get into what the Rite of Passage is, but really what I want to talk about is this theme of what is a Bitcoiner. So 2 years ago, I went on a journey across the US and basically asked myself this question at 30 different Bitcoin meetups that I visited. And what I was interested in is I think there is something more to being a Bitcoiner. It's something more than just owning Bitcoin. There's people that seem to connect with Bitcoin really quickly once they learn about it, and I wanted to figure out what is at the root of that. So today I'm going to share what I learned on those travels, what I called the Bitcoin tour, on 3 months of riding across the USA. But before I get into that, I want to explain why I'm here in Thailand. So I grew up in the Midwest of the US, and I lived in Philadelphia and New York for about 7 years. And then in 2019, I moved to Thailand because I was looking for a different life. And I think I found it here. I found a place that I can call home. เราก็พูดไทยได้นิดหน่อยนะครับครับเป็นตอนนี้ประเทศไทยเหมือนบ้านของผมนะครับ Anyway, I don't have the vocabulary to speak Thai in the whole talk, so it's going to be in English, unfortunately. So in 2020, I really went deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And through that whole time being stuck in lockdown in Thailand, I was on Twitter all the time and connecting with Bitcoiners all over the world on Twitter. And so in 2022, I decided to visit the US again, and I wanted to go to Bitcoin meetups and meet all these people that I had been talking with on Twitter for 2 years. And I decided to go on what I consider the ultimate freedom machine, a motorcycle. Actually, my girlfriend bought me a tiny model of this exact motorcycle that sat on my desk for a year before I bought that actual model and began the tour. So I ended up riding for about 100 days. I covered over 20,000 kilometers. I went to 30 different Bitcoin meetups, probably shook the hands of 1,000 Bitcoiners. One thing to note is that it was a Bitcoin-only tour. I don't know where that went. Okay, there we go. I went to Bitcoin-only meetups, so I didn't go to crypto, blockchain meetups. When I first got into this space, there really wasn't a difference, but by 2022, I started to see that there's a marked difference. So what I have to say really defines what I believe a Bitcoiner is specific to people who are interested in Bitcoin only. The types of attitudes and mentalities that I found in Bitcoiners was actually quite often the complete opposite of what I found at crypto and blockchain meetups. So let me share a few traits that I found in Bitcoiners that I found in common with people, and I will illustrate that with a couple stories from the road to show you what I mean when I say that Bitcoiners are like this. So the first one is hardworking and honest. Bitcoiners value this idea of proof of work, meaning that they believe in working hard and in being honest. So why do I have cows on the screen? Well, one of the first stops that I went on the Bitcoin tour was to the Beef Initiative conference, the first Beef Initiative conference in Kerrville, Texas. And essentially at this conference, this guy, Texas Slim, brought together Bitcoiners, mostly finance and technology people, with ranchers, which I'd never been in a place that those two groups of people met before. And I noticed that they got along very, very well. And I think that's because similar to Bitcoin, where you can't fake a Bitcoin transaction, you can't fake your way to growing a cow. That cow has to be on the land and eat, and you have to get up every morning and care for those animals. There's no way to bullshit your way through it. So I found that Bitcoiners really embody that proof of work in their daily lives, whereas mainstream society is often looking for an easy way out. They're looking for distractions, they're looking for dopamine, and they've lost faith in the power of themselves. Next one is responsible and sovereign. So Bitcoiners like to take control of their own lives. So that is not just finances, but also health and many other areas. And I found that a lot of Bitcoiners, they take responsibility for their lives. So whereas in mainstream society, you see a lot of people blaming other people or pointing to other systems to to blame their problems on that system. Bitcoiners are taking control of their own lives and taking agency. And I found that Bitcoiners were focused on bottom-up solutions. This was one of the big reasons I went on the tour in the first place, is because over that time of COVID in 2020 and 2021, I saw so much panic and so much fear everywhere in every media source. The only time I saw hope and pragmatism was with Bitcoin meetups and with Bitcoiners on Twitter who were focused on their community and what can I do today to make my life better, my community's life better. So why do I have a bonfire on the screen? Well, one of the most impactful things that I did on this whole tour across the US is I went to this beefsteak event. So if you're familiar with a beefsteak, basically this chef that is a Bitcoiner and he cooks a bunch of beef. And Bitcoiners stand around in aprons and eat with their hands and eat like 7 courses of beef. And I went to this really unique beefsteak where we essentially camped for 3 nights, totally off grid. Nobody had cell service and we just hung out and ate beef essentially for like 2-3 nights. And this bonfire was always going. There was never a time that that bonfire was out in those 3 days. And we had this huge pile of wood. So the bonfire was probably here and the pile of wood was over there essentially. And I never once saw anyone ask someone else to go get wood. There was no, even though the guy who runs the beefsteak easily could have done it because he's kind of the man in charge, nobody ever had to tell anyone, go get wood. We would be sitting around the fire and someone would just notice that the wood pile is low and they'd get up and deal with it themselves. And I noticed that Bitcoin communities tend to self-organize. Each person carries that personal responsibility for the community, and it means you get to have these really beautiful experiences because everyone is taking responsibility for that experience. And then the final trait that I want to talk about is being entrepreneurial and curious. So a lot of Bitcoiners start their own businesses or create new projects. I noticed at Bitcoin meetups, most people had some sort of side thing that they were working on. And they're not waiting for permission, they're just building. So actually I have one example in my pocket, which is someone outside that's selling these bolt keys, and I bought a bunch for the rite of passage, and you can tap this on an NFC-enabled phone and pay some amount, pay a Lightning invoice right from your wallet. And he's just got a little booth out there and he's making these and selling them. So what do I have this, what is called a yurt on the screen? So this yurt is essentially a permanent tent, and I stayed in that in Michigan on the tour. A guy named Carl owns it, and he runs this homestead that you can see and has a flock of, at that time he had like 60 sheep. And essentially Carl used to be a video editor living in downtown LA, and he became obsessed with permaculture, which is this idea of the cycles of nature and of natural systems and building farming techniques around them so that you don't have to use all these external inputs. You can use the land and the animals and everything to create a self-fulfilling cycle. And so Carl had this yurt, he let me stay there, and the yurt actually, I was the first person to stay in that, and he's now listing it on Airbnb because he has an Airbnb business with his land where people come and stay. He lives in wine country in Michigan, so he has people come and stay for weekend trips and whatnot. So he's building all these tiny homes and yurts as well. He's just such an entrepreneurial person that's following his curiosity, not just in permaculture, but now in Bitcoin as well. And all of these things to me, they point to this pursuit of freedom. And I don't mean freedom necessarily in terms of freedom in government and in laws, but the freedom that begins in our minds. And on my tour, I noticed something strange about all the people outside of Bitcoin meetups in America. They seem to have lost that freedom in the place that around the world is known as the bastion of freedom. I found that people were overall tired, frustrated, and willing to do anything to escape the struggle they were in. And I found so many people just lost. People did not have that belief in themselves that's necessary to take the actions that will lead to their own freedom. They might have had all the rights of a free person, but they weren't able to use them because they lost that belief in themselves. And why was I seeing this? As I spoke with Bitcoiners, it became more and more clear. So as you probably heard many, many times at this conference, The currency or the money that we use today is produced by fiat, meaning by decree of those who are in power. What backs it is the authority and ultimately the physical power of our largest human institutions, the police, the jails, the military. Due to all the debt created in this system over the past 100 years, the authorities managing it have one choice. They must take more and more money and energy, and therefore freedom, from all of us, the people, in order to keep the system operating and maintain the value of that currency. So as I took state highways and back roads across America, I saw the effects of this fiat system firsthand. I saw how it drained people, it drained communities. I saw its effects in diners and grocery stores and coffee shops. That system, it wants to keep us as obedient workers, paying taxes and following rules without questioning them. And for the vast majority of people, this system is succeeding in that goal and keeping them down. Most people are not even trying to be free anymore. You may be familiar with the story of the elephant and the rope. Apparently, if you rope a baby elephant to a tree, it can't escape. But when that elephant grows up, it's strong enough to tear the whole tree out of the ground. But you don't even have to tie the rope to the tree. As long as the elephant feels the rope, it thinks, I can't go anywhere, I'm just gonna stay here. It's now taken that physical limitation and put it in their minds. And that's what I saw with so many Americans that I spoke with. Bitcoiners, on the other hand, they are waking up and seeking freedom. The problem is that the global economic and political system, which rests on top of fiat, cannot survive if people are free. It needs freedoms to slowly be eroded away to continue to operate. But Bitcoiners know something very important. They know that individuals pursuing freedom within themselves are a powerful force for good. These are the individuals that build happy lives, strong families, and most importantly, free societies for other people to grow up in. This is why cultivating freedom in mind, body, and spirit is so important to Bitcoiners. Simply put, freer individuals make for a better world. So through this journey I took across America, I saw Bitcoiners working towards this freedom in their minds. It led them to step out of the fiat rot, to start with small community projects and help improving everything around them, mostly through Bitcoin meetups. So after I finished the Bitcoin tour, I got to thinking, how can we intentionally cultivate that freedom in our minds? Well, I found that this comes from challenging ourselves, from stepping out of our comfort zone, and from seeing things in a new way. And it turns out the answer to that had been staring me in the face through my childhood, through moving to Thailand, and through my Bitcoin tour across the US. It was travel. That powerful tool for creating freedom, to me, is travel. But most people are doing it completely wrong. Travel helps you get outside of your comfort zone. It helps you push your limits. It challenges the things that you thought you knew. In a new place, everything is different. You hear new ideas, you try new foods, you meet people that live in a completely different way. So when I was a kid, I was lucky because my dad is a commercial airline pilot, and my family loved to travel. So the first time I left the US, I was 8 years old, and we went to China for 2 weeks. And that completely destroyed every model that I had about how reality worked. It was just so different. And when I came back to school, I had a hard time relating to people because I had had this experience that none of my classmates had had from the Midwest. Most people, the furthest they went was Mexico, or going to Paris or Europe was a big deal. So with each trip that we took, that desire to keep pushing my comfort zone just kept growing and growing and growing. And then when I got to Thailand, again, my whole model of how the world worked was completely smashed. But the internet has changed travel. Now it is so easy to plan an entire trip from where you are, and from where you are, not just physically, but in your brain. The algorithms around us, the people around us, allow you to build a travel experience where you don't ever leave your comfort zone. You're only visiting places that an algorithm has recommended to you because it knows that you will like it, or that your friends have recommended to you. And you can do research on it so that you don't truly experience these places. You've already watched the YouTube video and sucked in all this knowledge about it. So when you see it, you're just replaying what you had imagined you would see. So this is where I draw a line between travel and tourism. Tourism is when you go somewhere but you stay in your comfort zone. You do what you already know and you plan everything ahead. Travel is when you step outside of your comfort zone. You go into the unknown and you take a couple risks. So I wanted to build something in this space. I wanted to build something for people to travel. So my team and local Thai partners decided to create an experience that combines that safety and comfort of tourism with the adventure and personal growth that comes from true travel. And that's where the Rite of Passage came from. So we call this the Rite of Passage. These are adventures tailor-made for Bitcoiners, for people who are like Bitcoiners. We call them trips money can't buy because they're meant to change you in ways that a regular vacation just won't. Every part of a Rite of Passage is designed to change how you see the world, not just through the travel itself, but through the conversations you have with other people who are like this on these trips. So some things that we do, we don't show itineraries most of the time. Every experience is therefore brand new because you don't know what you're going to see. And we focus on very local experiences with small groups so that you really get to see a place rather than just seeing what the TripAdvisor top 10 has for you. We also vet everyone who joins these trips because we're looking for people who value hard work, who are honest, value personal responsibility and self-sovereignty. We're looking for Bitcoiners. So throughout this whole journey that I took across America, meeting Bitcoiners in person, I learned that being a Bitcoiner is a lot more than just owning Bitcoin. It's about living a life based on hard work, personal responsibility, and a relentless pursuit of freedom. But this journey is not just about gathering money or accomplishments, it's very personal. It's about breaking free from those limits that hold us back, and that is in our mind. But it's through action and challenging ourselves and embracing the unknown and traveling that we change our minds, that we push past those limits. It's not something you typically do mentally. I found many Bitcoiners I met were more excited about this journey of freedom that I'm talking about than Bitcoin itself, even if they didn't say that out loud. And I believe it is this shared pursuit of freedom that draws Bitcoiners together. So many Bitcoiners see Bitcoin as the best form of money. That's true to me, but I think Bitcoin is about way more than money. To me, Bitcoin brings together people who are searching for freedom, like all of us here today. And that pursuit of freedom is what will make the world a better place. Thank you.